Welcome to BARI Banter, where we talk everything bariatric surgery with the people that know it best, the patients. I'm Shannon, and I'm here with my co-hostess with the mostest,
Lita. So sit back, relax, and remember, sip, sip, sip.
Welcome to episode 89, Lita. It's just ticking away. This year is just gone. It's going.
I'm loving.
Going.
I'm loving that we have this little board.
Well, I look at it every week.
Look at it now.
I'm like 89.
Too bad if I forget to change the number.
Well, last week it was 80 and because we have it two eights. This week I'm going to try something new. I literally just told Alita before we just started this that I have a random segment organised for her. And she doesn't know. And she's like, she wanted to know. And I'm like, no, I'm keeping it a secret. The segment that I'm going to do before we introduce our amazing guest today.
A whole segment, hey?
Well, I'm just calling it it sounds
okay.
better than I have some random things for you.
Yep.
Is random comments found on Facebook, on the weight loss pages. And I'm like, let's answer a few of the questions that are on there. And I tried to find some like good ones. The first one leading off is, okay, this is an awkward question. It's for the ladies. So after surgery, did your, and she has a picture of a cat, lose some weight too, and in a good way?
I don't think mine did.
No?
Yeah, I don't know. No, I don't think so.
You don't sound... Do you want to go have a moment and you can tell me?
I'll
go look at some of those old photos that you used to send out to all the boys and then compare the two.
No, I think much like males, like you guys have got like that little pouch thing. Yeah, so I think I had that and it might have shrunk a little bit, but my actual like cat hasn't.
Your actual cat has it. Because that's always like on any male group, whenever you start a male weight loss group, the first thing is, the boys, did your penis get bigger? It's like, it's always
no,
like...
my pouch just got...
it's just not hiding like a little wombat anymore. Another one is, did anyone all of a sudden get a pain on their right side, which they feel in their ribs? Mostly when they breathe, and when they breathe, I can feel the pain in my right shoulder as well. I'm 12 days post-op, and it just came on to say... I screenshotted this one because I actually had that. And I thought, oh, have I got a leak or something like that? Like, so I read that and I was like, oh my God, how funny. Like, I talked to a lot of people and they're like, no, I'm not having that. It's weird. That's strange. But then seeing this comment, I was like, I had that.
Did you get an answer?
When?
Like when you had it?
No one did. But now I'm like, I'm going to reply to this person after this segment and say, oh no, I had exactly the same thing. Like, it was just, yeah.
Because I would say immediately thinking that before you said 12 days post-op, I would have said like gallbladder. But 12 days post-op and the shoulder pain too, that's just gas pain, I think, still.
Yeah, no, it was always like a bit of a pulling feeling
like
underneath
like
under your ribs. Yeah, it was a random one, and I had it probably for almost the first year. As I like
to say, I'm no doctor, but it could have been gas pain or it could be something to do with your gallbladder.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Halita. I really appreciate it. Random question.
I got my PhD at the 7-Eleven.
What was his name? No. Random question for all of you. Since you had your sleeve, has anyone noticed their left arm goes numb, tingly a lot? I hadn't had that. Did you? No. Okay.
No, but I've found that my nose used to run a lot, or still does run a lot. I think it's a symptom of overeating, is if your nose runs.
Last one before we get our amazing guest on is... No, it's a girl question again. It's a random question. Did anyone have to remove their acrylic nails before surgery? I was like... That's something I, as a boy, would never think of.
So that's because back in the day, you used to have to remove all of your acrylic nails and stuff because when they put the blood pressure thing or the heart monitor thing on your finger, if you have acrylic nails on, they can't actually register a pulse properly. So it's a little bit different now, but I used to always advise people if they had acrylic nails on, at least take one off each finger of each hand.
Oh, no way.
Just so that they can actually still register a pulse.
That's such a thing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. There you go, guys. I don't mind that segment. I feel like I want to just keep screenshotting really random ones that I find, just put a leader on the spot in future.
And we'll call that segment A Leader's on the Spot.
A Leader's on the Spot. Leader's got spots. Anyway, let's introduce our amazing guest, get her on, and have a good old chat. Chin wag.
Before we kick off, thank you to our Opti and Premium Patreons, Alicia, Barb, Laura, and Lou. But today's guest went under the knife in April 2018, much like us. With a start weight of 142 kilos, she underwent the sleeve with the hopes to drop the weight to improve her chances of IVF. Not only has she lost the weight, she now has not one, but two incredibly cute children. Wow, that was a tongue twister for me. Here to talk to us about her journey is Stacey, also known as Love, Peace, Heal, Life on Instagram. Hey, lovely.
Hi guys, how you going?
Yeah, very well. 27th of April, hey? We're like little April twins. It's a bit cute. I'm not going to lie.
Triplets, there's three of us. Triplets.
Oh, Yeah.
Yeah.
I was leaving you out of the equation.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're early April, we're late April, 19th, 27th, it's how we roll. So we can kind of relate to what you went through with the surgery, obviously, because we're doing the whole fertility thing now, and we're not having the easiest time in the world. For you, was that purely the 99% reason why you went for bariatric surgery? The fertility? Did I mention that? I don't think I actually said fertility in that.
Yeah. It was a contributing factor. So my medical history is that when I was at the age of 12, I had a gangrenous cyst on my ovary that was cancerous. It turned gangrene and leaked into my system. It strangled one of my ovaries and part of my fallopian tube. So I had what's called an oophorectomy, which is the removal of that. So I only have one working ovary. I was always told going through puberty and into my early 20s that I would always struggle to conceive. I didn't meet my now husband until I was in my late 20s, early 30s. So, being at that age, fertility does drop a little bit. I started undergoing fertility treatments not long after we married 8 years ago. But before that, when we were doing all the pre-testing, we found that I actually had stage 1B uterine cancer. So I then had to treat that for 12 months, which has now been cleared for a few years. And because of that, I had to do a fertility preservation to make sure that I had some eggs before cancer treatment started. So in case that while I was going through cancer treatment, my ovaries and my fertility were affected. So we did that. The preservation was not successful. I was unable to obtain any viable ovaries. Any eggs. Thank you. So we put it off for another 2 years. I then went back and did 3 rounds of IVF, and all of those were unsuccessful.
Oh, wow.
I had low egg counts, like viable eggs for those, and then none of the embryos survived. So after that, I took a break for a little while because mentally it was quite challenging, as you guys would know, and of course it was also financially difficult. So we took a little break. I went back and saw my fertility specialist. Look, growing up, being a heavier weight all my life, everybody has always suggested that I do weight loss surgery. And of course, back then it was banned, and I refused. I tried to do everything that the dietitians had suggested. I saw dietitian after dietitian, went on so many crash diets and all that type of stuff. Nothing would work. So I kind of got to the point where it was just one day I was sitting at home thinking about my health and thinking about our fertility journey when I said, all right, I will go and see go have a consultation with a surgeon. I went down to one of those walk-in GP clinics and said, I want a referral right now. So it was pretty much on the spot.
Yep.
I'd made the decision, went through, and I got the consultation. I wasn't too sure if I still wanted to continue, but what got me over the line was it was either going to cost me another $50,000 to do another round of IVF, because this was before it was all started to be subsidized, or I pay the X amount of dollars it was to have bariatric surgery and see if it worked. So it wasn't 100% that it would work and it would improve my fertility, but I was willing to try that instead of paying another $50,000 to see another failed cycle.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, I'm going to give you a bit of a spoiler alert here, but it was successful. You saved yourself $30,000. That's a win.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's a win.
There was so much to unpack in that
I know.
little segment. I'm just like, kept on going.
You almost lost me at when you were 12 and that whole episode happened, and then you went on and I was like...
they had to remove something. I was like, so did they remove one of your ovaries, or they just removed the cancer cyst that were in the ovaries?
No, they had to remove the ovary and the fallopian tube.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
Because you guys have 2 ovaries, right?
Yes, we have 2.
Female organs,
Organics.
organics aren't my strong suit. So I was like, wait a second, I think you have 2 of them, right?
And then you had cancer on top of that.
Yeah, so I had stage 1B uterine cancer and what's called hyperplasia. So hyperplasia is the cells in the wall of the endometrium, and then there's cancer in the actual uterus. So we had that removed. I had to go for D&C surgeries and have hormone therapy done every 2 months for 1 year, and that seemed to work. And I've been all clear for however many years it's been now, 4 years.
Wow.
So,
how many rounds in total did you have of IVF?
We've had 5 rounds altogether.
5 rounds altogether. And you said when they were doing the eggs, looking for eggs, there was none to harvest. So how did you guys get around that?
Yeah, so it was I guess they do the grading system of how healthy your eggs are. So started off, they weren't that great. They kind of improved after I had the cancer treatment. They had improved. So then we tried to do, make embryos, and that didn't work. So we would get a couple, and then they wouldn't survive up to their day 3 before we could freeze them or fresh transfer them. So none of that worked. When we did have our successful IVF, which was, I was 11 months post-op in 2019, I had 1 surviving embryo, and he stuck.
Oh, wow.
They say all it takes is 1.
All it takes is 1.
But it's so disheartening to get to that 1, isn't it?
It sure is. It's a lot of mental stress, financial stress, relationship stress. It's nothing to be taken lightly, that's for sure. And there's not much talk about it either. So I'm always willing to talk to anybody who might be going through it. And that's why I shared my story, is because it's talked about a little bit more now, but 4 or 5 years ago, it wasn't talked about much at all.
Yeah.
When you first went into that fertility clinic, prior to weight loss surgery, were you bigger then?
Yes.
And
so
did you feel judged or anything by them, or did they tell you that, obviously with your history, were they sort of like, your weight's also not going to help this situation?
I didn't feel judged, which was great. I did my fertility through the public system at the Royal Women's. So they had a lot of patients who were bigger and who suffered from infertility issues. All the private clinics that I had inquired with, they pretty much said they wouldn't touch me.
Wow.
It's funny too, because remember when we first went into that fertility clinic and we said that, we've both lost an extreme amount of weight and that, we're hoping to be able to go a little bit further on our fertility journey. They straight away just said, oh wow, if you guys had walked in here 90 and 60 kilos heavier, we would have pretty much turned you away.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's kind of crazy that they just, I understand that it's not judging a book by its cover, because overweight people sometimes do find it harder to fall pregnant, but it was just kind of when she said that to me, I was just kind of like, oh wow, we're being judged our entire life for our weight. I never thought that
you'd assume there'd be some kind of medical reasons for it though, obviously they're trying to bring the risk down, so that must have to play into it to a certain degree. I don't think it's just a case of you're not fit to be a parent because you're overweight. You know what I mean?
No, it wasn't that. It was just more so you're not healthy enough, as in the fat around your organs and all those sorts of things. And I'm not a doctor, so I don't know how it works, but there's obviously reasons behind.
Guys, if you're playing a drinking game at home and every time Alita says I'm not an expert, it's going to be a fun night for you. She's already about 5 of them. So, have you always struggled with your weight? Even when you were younger, like you said, when you were 12 and stuff, was that still a concern and an issue back then?
Yeah. So I've been overweight most of my life. I put on most of the weight when I was at the 12-year mark, when I was in hospital actually having my first surgery. um, my weight jumped from, I reckon, jumped 20 kilos in 2 months.
Wow.
That was just the start of the hormonal changes because, of course, I was starting, I was preteen, hormonal changes because of the surgery and just everything. My metabolism kind of just shot itself. And since then, I've struggled with my weight.
Yeah. And is your family like, larger, or like was there?
They're not petite people, but they're not huge either. I was bigger than my parents.
Okay.
From probably about 16 years of age is when I really started packing on the weight, and that had to do with peer pressure and the things that you go through when you're a teenager. I used to be really active when I was younger and a teenager, and then I had a knee reconstruction, and that sidelined me for ages. That then, I then took to emotional eating and kind of just spiraled from there.
Yeah, it does happen like that, especially when you get over that age of 20 and things just start being like easier, but it makes things harder because you're like so easily accessible to food and stuff like that, and you get to make your own decisions. And I'm going to treat myself every day.
What's that meme where they're like, I always used to want to eat cake, but now that I'm an adult, I realize I can eat cake every single day.
Yeah. So did your folks? Sorry, I don't want to ask too much about your family, obviously, but did they struggle with fertility, when they were trying, or was it an instantaneous thing?
No, they had. Yeah, they had no issues at all. I am actually in the medical books back from when I was 12 and I had my surgery, because I was one of the youngest people to be diagnosed with PCOS.
Wow.
So back then, we're talking 20 years ago. 25 years ago, they didn't know what it was really. There was only a few specialists, and I struggled with that. Up until mid-20s, I could not find somebody who could treat me because nobody knew about it. And that just kind of spiraled the depression even more. I just didn't want to go out. I didn't want to speak to anyone. I was experiencing, moods and, hot flushes and weight gain and, hair where hair shouldn't be and all that type. And I didn't have any support from any medical professionals because I couldn't find anyone.
Yeah, that takes a bit of a strain mentally as well, especially at that age. It's like it really would have impacted you in many ways.
I know that when I was sort of 16, 17, we were trying to there was a few things that were going on with me as well, and we were trying to pinpoint it, and it got to the point where I just ended up, like I said to the doctor, I'm sick of having needles put in me. I'm sick of having like internal ultrasounds, like, because they, back then as well, like it wasn't what it was probably about 7 years ago or so. It was still quite sort of endometriosis and PCOS.
Did you say 17? It was 7 years ago. Leeds, you're a little bit older than that.
I was hoping you weren't going to pull me up on
that. No, that's
that.
all right. Just 24. Yeah, I don't think you can pass for 24. Maybe 28 or something. But yeah, continue.
But anyway, damn you for pulling me up on that. But like even back then they were kind of like, it was still very sort of new in a sense of things. And so it was just kind of like, it was like, oh, we don't have a definitive answer. We're just going to send you for more blood tests, or we're going to go to another internal ultrasound. And got to the point of doing like that for about 8 months straight that I was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And then I started looking down a while later. I started looking down the route of...
What, like another year later?
Yeah, like 6 months later when I was like 30.
Yeah.
I started looking down the path of weight loss surgery, and then after I had the weight loss surgery, a lot of it sort of started clearing up because I was dropping the weight and it wasn't quite as bad. So I feel you.
Yeah, it is. It is one of those things. And like obviously before you had like weight loss surgery, how long had you been with your partner, and how long were you guys kind of trying for? Naturally?
So we were trying for 9 years. 5 years prior to finding out that I had the cancer and we were starting fertility treatment, I was always told that I'd have issues. So when I did have the cancer and went through that, I was told by the professors of, the head professors of the oncology team and the fertility specialist that I would never, ever be able to conceive myself.
Wow.
So that it made things harder. So that's why we took a break, because that's just so hard to try and process.
Mm.
So when we did go back to it, and that's why I decided to have the weight loss surgery. I said, look, we'll try, we'll see if this is going to work. If it doesn't, then we'll take the next steps that we need to. We were very, very lucky that we did. And it did work. And my little boy was born premature. He was born 7 weeks early. But we were very lucky. He didn't have any medical conditions from being born premature, which was great. And then we kind of took the advice of doctors saying that I would never be able to conceive naturally ever. And we had a gorgeous surprise 4 months postpartum where I had fallen pregnant naturally.
Wow. So how long was after surgery was that one? Because the first one was 11 months, and that the second one, your girl.
So the second one it was probably 1 or 2 weeks before 2 years post-op.
Oh wow. So a year later, pretty much. So 1 year out from surgery, almost 2 years out from surgery. Wow.
They do say that once you've had one, your body just kind of goes, oh, wow, that's what I was meant to do. Okay, I'll do it again.
Yeah, it's strange because I listened to a podcast once before about fertility, and they said having bariatric surgery, there was no evidence to say it's going to help. But they were like, there is a large amount of people who do fall pregnant after bariatric surgery. And I'm like, so, body-wise, there's no real benefit to it, but people do fall pregnant after bariatric surgery, and it's kind of like, well, what are we doing different after surgery to be successful?
Well, with a woman's body as well, though, your hormones are changing drastically as you're losing the weight. So a lot of people will find, I know that, my surgeon said to me, make sure that you're on contraceptive after you have the surgery, because there's a high chance that you will fall pregnant, because your hormones are just changing so rapidly.
Really?
Now I'm like,
I wouldn't think that would be a beneficial thing though, because hormone imbalances and stuff. You wouldn't think that would be ideal to.
Sorry, that was me. I liked them.
I know, just liking messages. You wouldn't think that it would be a beneficial thing to fall pregnant, because I was thinking in my head the reason why it would probably be successful is because a lot of these external pressures, because you're losing weight and you're feeling good about yourself. Or a lot of that pressure and that stress has been taken away a little bit. And then that's maybe you've kind of gone, oh, I've got a bit of mental freedom. And then,
well, it's probably that, along with the fact that your hormones are just wee, we're doing things again. We're catching up.
We're catching up.
We're losing weight. We're catching up.
Yeah.
Was that something that your surgeon, obviously you went to your surgeon saying this is the outcome that you're hoping to achieve, to be able to fall pregnant. Did they give you a guideline as to when they would hopefully like you to, how long they'd like you to wait post-op before you felt pregnant?
No, my surgeon didn't have the best bedside manner, and I never returned to him after surgery. So, so I had pretty much just been liaising with my fertility specialist, and they said as long as all my vitamin levels and my sugar levels, because I was pre-diabetic beforehand, all those had come down to normal ranges, and I had kept that for at least 3 months, and they were happy to proceed.
Okay.
Which was great.
Yeah.
But just going back to what you were talking about before in regards to hormones, I hear that, well, as it's been explained to me, that when you're at an overweight range, you produce more estrogen.
2 seconds.
Yeah, you're right.
You actually produce more estrogen, and that doesn't help with the fertility process. So once you start losing weight, your estrogen levels drop. And for me, it was my PCOS symptoms. They dropped dramatically also. And I think those two together had a contributing factor to why I personally was successful.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then the natural one, it was probably just a case of oh, well, we've got a kid now. No pressure. And then bam.
That's Shannon's technical medical term.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's exactly what they would have said too. Oh, it's a bam baby. It's just wham bam baby. So did you talk to them about obviously having bariatric surgery, the fertility doctors? I'm going to go with specialists. There we go. Did you talk to them about obviously having bariatric surgery, and did they have any concerns in relation to that?
No, they were really supportive of it. They had mentioned it to me a couple of times, and I said, no, I want to try and do it myself. That's when they put me on to different dietitians, and we went through so many different processes, different dietary recommendations and all that type of stuff, and the weight just didn't budge for me.
Yeah.
We couldn't understand why it wasn't. Can't tell you what it was. So yeah, that's why, you know, they didn't push it, but it was there. Like they would bring it up occasionally. Have you thought about it? You know, maybe you should just have a look into it. But yeah, but they were very supportive once I said I was going ahead with it. And they kept in check with me until I was ready to get, you know, until I had those, you know, bloods all perfect. They just kept catching up with me to make sure everything was going well.
Yeah.
And your premature Baba, your first one, that had nothing to do with any complications due to having weight loss surgery. It was just how your pregnancy happened.
Yeah, that's right. You know, there are stories out there that there could be issues, but it's not. They can't pinpoint that. There's no studies to suggest that weight loss surgery does cause premature babies. In my regards, it was, you know, they still don't know what had happened throughout the pregnancy. Like after, I think I was 9 weeks along, and I had a hematoma and bled profusely, and thought we lost the pregnancy, but he ended up keeping on. I had another one at 16 weeks, and by the time I hit 24 weeks, we realized that he wasn't growing very well. So he ended up being IUGR, which is intrauterine growth restriction, and he was born at 1.6 kilos, which is 3 pounds 6 in the scale. It was tiny, but I was monitored. I was looked after really well by the doctors and the nurses and the midwives. But still, to this day, there is no reason to why he was so small at birth.
And he's happy and healthy now?
Yeah, never had any issues. Normally at that age, some babies struggle with lung development. So when I went into preterm labour and I went into natural labour, they had to slow down my labour to inject me with steroids to make sure that his lungs would be sufficient when he was born. But there was no issues at all. He had no issues at all. He was just in there until he made it to 38 weeks, and he made it to 2 kilos.
So, yeah, I reckon he came early because that hot curry they had to. No, he's like, I'm out of here.
I'm done.
I
can't get through.
No more hot curry for me.
So
see, I say that it was because I'm just so awesome, and he couldn't wait to meet me.
He's like, this chick sounds sick. I want to get out of here.
I want to see her. I want to see her face. How did you cope though? So you had 2 babies, one premature and another, we're going to say like a surprise baby, within 13 months of each other, and dealing with going through Melbourne lockdowns in the middle of a pandemic and all that sort of thing. How did you cope?
It was a real struggle, and I shared some of it through my Instagram. I didn't realize, and I'm looking at it now that I see a clinical psychologist. Back after I had my second baby, I had postnatal depression, and I didn't realize, or I had blocked that, you know, what I was going through because it was too traumatic for me. So once my first baby was, he was in NICU until he was 4 weeks old, I believe. So it was late November. He came home. So he was only really small when we went into our first lockdown in February. So he was 4 months old, I believe. And that was hard. But at that time, we were kind of in and out. But because I had fallen pregnant, it was classified as a high-risk pregnancy because of him being premature. My second one was a high-risk pregnancy. So I actually had to go to the hospital 3 times a week to be monitored and checked and scanned and all that type of stuff. So I was in and out. So I wasn't always at home. Come to my second one, we were in constant lockdown. So I didn't have support at all, being that there was only 13 months between them. My first one wasn't walking or anything like that. So I had pretty much 2 babies with me at the time. It was really stressful. It was really isolating. My mental health got, it was shot. I didn't have support. I didn't have anyone who could visit me. It was really, really tough, and I really, really struggled with it.
Mm.
In the past, would you have used food to cope?
Yeah, definitely. I did to an extent this time. I did after my first pregnancy, having a newborn, and with he had colic as well, so he would cry every time I put him down, and I had to constantly look after him. I couldn't have any time to myself. He was just, he was unsettled. I turned to pretty much toast. I had toast. I reckon I'd have 12 pieces of toast a day because it was the only thing I could make
Quick and
with
easy.
one hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, quick and easy and with one hand. So by the time my second one came along, she wasn't as bad, but by the time she had reached 6 weeks of age, she was in hospital for bronchiolitis. And that's when things took a turn. So that's when I turned to emotional eating. And yeah, that with the stress of now I know is postnatal depression and having two bubs at home, locked at home, and never saw anyone. My partner, my husband was, he was out of the house for 14 hours a day. So it was just me. That's when I turned to emotional eating, and it happened. I'm 20 kilos up from my lowest weight, and while I wouldn't want to go back to that, I still am struggling with the weight gain. I wasn't in a hurry to get rid of it at all, but I feel uncomfortable where I am now. I'd like to lose 10, 15 kilos, but I don't want to do it drastically or anything like that. I have to get my head right, and that's why I'm seeing a clinical psychologist to get that right and make sure that I'm not doing the binge eating and the emotional eating again like I did while I was in lockdown last year.
Yeah, yeah, because honestly, like what you've been through, like even with like the IVF and stuff like that, it would have taken not just a physical strain, but mental strain, especially with like, having them not be like successful. And I think sometimes we don't understand how much mental stress and strain that puts on us. Like we kind of go, no, it's fine. Like we'll move through this. It's tough, but it'll be fine. But it does really impact you, doesn't it? Like it really, hits home harder than you sometimes think it does.
For sure. And I'm one of those people who put walls up. So the whole time I was going through IVF, it was a job. I had to do a job. If I got too emotional, then I couldn't deal with it. So to stop myself from getting hurt, I put all these walls up, and I'm still trying to work out how to break down those walls to help with my emotional eating. Because once those walls go up, then to protect yourself, you just build more walls, and you detach your emotions from everything. Um, so that's what I'm kind of working with through at the moment. And then, one thing after the other, then lockdown happened, and that just made it worse. So yeah, I'm just trying to work all that out now.
Yeah.
It's
So
taken a lot.
with your first pregnancy, because how much weight were you down for your first pregnancy? Like how many kilos did you drop since?
65 kilos. So I
65.
was when I had my transfer, I was 80 kilos. I got really, really sick in my first trimester, and I dropped down to 74 kilos.
So did you find the whole having to, like, because some people say when they have a pregnancy, they're really concerned with putting on weight. Was that a concern of you, or were you just so excited to have a baby that it wasn't a concern? Like how was your mental processing in that department?
With the first baby, I was fine. I knew that I was growing a human and I was going to put on weight, and I had no issues with that at all. I don't know if it was because I hadn't put on much weight during the pregnancy, and that he was so small. But within a couple of days, I was back to my pre-pregnancy weight. Um, so I don't know if that affected me more, like it could have affected me more if I had put on more weight. I'm not too sure. But after the second one, I put on 20 kilos. And it took me a good, I reckon, 6 months before it started to bother me that I had put on the weight and that it wasn't shifting. It was kind of just getting, like I was just growing a bit more because of my terrible eating habits. So I don't think it really was about the pregnancy. It was about the way I treated myself postpartum.
Yeah, yeah. So, because obviously it would have just been a case of, You know, because I guess when you have a kid, you kind of go, oh, you know, I'm eating for two. Like, I guess the whole, you know, like eating, restrictive eating kind of goes out the window because you are trying to fuel for two humans. So it's kind of like a really good way to justify those little habits as well, and just be like, oh no, it's fine. Like, I'm eating for two. Like, you know, so it'd be a good way to kind of allow them to come back a bit.
And then I've also found that a lot of people have said that once they've had the kids, they don't have enough time to put themselves first. And then often, you know, they'll be making food for the kids for dinner, and you'll end up snacking on all of their dinner whilst you're making it. And then you have your dinner afterwards. So it's essentially like you're having two dinners every night. And yeah, it's very easy to sort of just blow out a little bit, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and especially with the postnatal depression and stuff like that. You know, because that's I'm not really familiar with that, but that's after surgery? Kind of have like what
after
were the
surgery, after birth?
After birth, like what were kind of the feelings you were having, and like, you know, kind of talk to me about that because I want to kind of understand postnatal depression. I've heard it before.
You've got so much to look forward to, Shane.
I know. Well, yeah.
So mine wasn't as, I guess you could call it, severe as what some women go through. As I'd mentioned before, I'm good at putting up walls and just doing what I need to do to get through the day. And disassociating what I was going through just made it worse. So I just didn't deal with my feelings at all. There came a breaking point at one stage where I thought to myself that I'm going to drive my children over to my parents' house, drop them off, and admit myself to hospital.
Wow.
Because I just couldn't deal with it anymore. But I'd kind of talked myself around that. I didn't end up going to hospital. You know, I spoke to my husband and we kind of tried to put things in place. And it happened a couple of times. But then I decided that I was going to return to work earlier than what I had anticipated. And I think that helped somewhat. When I returned to work, I had to do the first 3 months working from home, and the first few weeks working at home with two children, so a 6-month-old and an 18-month-old, who had just started climbing things and they needed my attention the whole time. So I struggled a lot. So I think that just added fuel to the fire as well. Yeah, and it wasn't until I started, you know, going into the office and seeing people and having conversations with people outside of my house that things started to settle down, and I was able to see things clearly as what I actually went through in that 18 months to 2 years that we were in lockdown.
Yeah, it would have been hard. You went back in the office and been like, who's a good boy? And they're like, you've been hanging out with babies too much.
Well, they say a lot of people too, though, who go through postnatal depression, like some people like end up like resenting their babies, like, and just.
Well, that's kind of some of the ones I've heard was, I guess, the more severe end of it.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, it comes in all different forms. Obviously, it's not something that you know, just has one.
But it's hard too because a lot of people won't diagnose themselves with it, or they don't understand that that's what they're going through, and then they end up hiding these thoughts in the back of their minds because they're like, I'm going crazy.
Well,
like,
especially if you're a first-time mum.
Or especially if you've spent so much time and effort trying to fall pregnant, like IVF or something like that, and then all of a sudden you've got postnatal depression and you like physically hate this little human that you've created. Like that would be so hard.
I know, and it's like because you don't know what to expect. Like there's no handbook to say this is what you should feel and do. Same as bariatric surgery. There's no handbook to say this is what you need to do. So as a mum, you kind of go, well, this is obviously just motherhood. This is the feelings I'm meant to be feeling. And it's like, you don't want to go to someone and be like, this is the way I'm feeling there, and fear that they're going to judge you for feeling that way. So it all kind of just, that would have been a hard time, you know, let alone raising two kids, both under the age of 2. That would have been, nuts. I can hardly look after myself, let alone 2 other kids.
And 2 dogs.
Yeah.
So obviously, though, your main focus to have weight loss surgery was to have kids and start a beautiful family. You've obviously done that quite successfully. You've also successfully done weight loss surgery. I don't know how else I was going to say that. But
she's just done a lot of good.
You've
done a lot of good.
You've done good.
Yeah.
What's your focus now that like your main reasoning for having surgery like has sort of been complete, I guess you could say?
Yeah, it's more about refocusing on myself and working on my mental health and my eating habits and just making myself feel better about myself. You know, I still struggle now to this day. So, you know, my oldest is 2.5, of putting myself first. It is a struggle. At the moment, both of my children are really, really sick. They've been sick for a week. I've had to have time off work. They fight for my attention. I haven't been able to breathe. And it's really, really hard. I've been having less than 3 hours sleep a night for the past week. So, you know, I normally go out. So I'm a member of a boxing gym. I used to go there 4 times a week, and, you know, getting out of the house to go to work, which is an hour drive each way, having that time to myself, does help things. But now that they're sick at the moment, it is a struggle again. And I've gone back to reverting back to emotional eating and grabbing whatever I can out of the pantry, because that's all that I have time for. And I'm not getting out of the house because they're just too sick to do anything. So I'm back in that rut again. So I just need to, you know, once they're all well again, refocus myself and try and get back to looking after myself again.
It is one of those hard things, you know, putting yourself first. And I did actually read your stories today where you talked about how you went and saw a GP, and then his recommendation of, you know, taking some time for yourself once they're healing. I was like, that's really solid advice, because it would be very like straining on you. And because you know, females are the kind of people who in general put others before themselves, and let alone when you're a new mom. So yeah, I think that was solid advice. I think you definitely need to take that time and you know, look after yourself in that aspect.
Yeah, for sure.
One of your things that you really want to focus on for your kids as they're growing up is implementing, like, to make sure that they're having healthy habits and, you know, they're living their best life, so to speak. Have you started implementing certain things with the kids yet, or are they still a little bit too young for you to start sort of implementing those habits?
I think they're still a little too young at the moment. We still get out. We make sure that we spend time outside. You know, we have our little routines, and I just make sure that, you know, I'm going through toddler stage at the moment, which is where they're throwing tantrums, you know, 24 hours a day. So it's stressful on everyone. So just making sure that they're supported emotionally is my main focus at the moment. We, you know, they have you know, treats and things like that, everything in moderation. But they're also going through the picky stage. So if they're going to eat chips tonight, they're going to get chips, because I don't have time to argue with them over what's good and what's bad. And I don't want that stigma around them. I want them to be able to eat, you know, understand, you know, good, healthy eating, and that nothing should be restricted at all. Because I don't want them to go through the cycle of binge eating that I did. So every time I ate something terrible, I didn't eat for 3 days. And then when I finally got to eating again, I would eat everything in sight. So it's a vicious cycle, and I don't want my children to have to go through that ever in their lives. As long as they're eating happy, you know, they're eating well, they're happy and they're active, then, you know, what else can I ask for, really?
It's funny you say that, because actually one of my good mates, his partner is a vegan, and their daughter grew up not ever having chocolate, not ever having fast food, and she became a human who just literally goes, oh, you know, like, she's go to my ex's parents' house, and they want, you want some chocolate? And she goes, no, but I'll have a carrot. Like, it was so weird that, like, she'd never had it, so she didn't know what she was missing out on, so she just kind of never wanted it. And it was weird. Like, it was like, for me, I'm like, what kid doesn't want chocolate? And this kid was like, no, I'll have a carrot, or even some broccoli. If you have broccoli, ooh, that would be yum. And I was like, you are a strange kid.
It's funny, I was having this conversation with one of my friends who's currently pregnant at the moment, and she's got 2 other kids to her partner. And she was saying that they're going, again, through that real fussy stage where it's kind of like they're kind of saying, are you not eating what's on your plate because you don't like it? Are you not eating what's on your plate because you're full? Or are you just being stubborn and you don't want to eat it? And if it comes down to they're being stubborn and they don't want to eat it, they're now making them put it in the fridge and eat it for breakfast cold the next morning.
Did that to me as well.
But then she was also saying, like, I was like, I'm going to be the mother that makes the homemade, like, chicken nuggets and the homemade fish fingers. And then we ended up being like, you know what? When you've got 3 kids and you know, pushed for time, if the only thing they're going to eat is chicken nuggets, you're going to give them the processed chicken nuggets. Like, there's not like, in an ideal world, I'd love to be like organic, which I'm not even organic now, so I don't even know why I know. Do it for my kids.
When your kids eat better than you do.
But I'm going to make the chicken nuggets, and I'm going to make the food like the pureed, and I'm going to do this. At the end of the day, I guarantee that I'll be like, I'll walk down to Chemist Warehouse and be like, eat this mush.
Yeah, unless you're Kim Kardashian and you have like personal chefs. Yeah. You know, it's not feasible in life 90% of the time. There are 10% of people that could be able to do it, but yeah, making that judgment call at the time, I think, is what you need to do as a parent, because doesn't sound easy. Just saying. Have you had good post-op support with, you kind of said you hadn't really talked to your surgeon. Have you had dietitians and psychologists and stuff? Well, you got a new one that you're talking to, but have you had bariatric support after surgery?
No, I didn't. So kind of part of my surgeon package, I guess you'd call it, was that I had a 6-week post-op appointment with, it was supposed to be the surgeon, and I got a trainee type of doctor. And it cost me $300 for him to say, oh yeah, I stood on the scales, and he said, oh yeah, you're good, and let me go. I was like, well, I'm not paying $300 to go see a doctor like that.
No.
So I severed all ties straight away. With the dietitian, once my surgery date was up, that was it. It wasn't included in any post-surgery appointments at all. I have to source it myself. And I was honestly just stubborn.
Yeah.
So I didn't take my vitamins. Like you had your post up today, Shannon, about vitamins. I never took my vitamins. They made me sick at the start. I had a lot of issues with keeping fluids down, and it made me quite sick for the first few weeks. So I couldn't keep vitamins down. And by the time I got to, I saw the changes and my bloods were all fine, I said, well, why am I taking them? Or why am I struggling to swallow my vitamins? So I really didn't see anyone at all. I didn't feel I needed to see a dietitian at that time. It probably would have helped if I did, especially when I had my first one, because all that I craved was potato cakes and cheese, and that's all I could keep down because I was so sick through my first pregnancy. And that really didn't help going into the second either, and the stresses of being in lockdown. But, it is what it is, and I'm now sourcing the correct help that I need to be able to get back to my goals.
Yeah, it is. It makes it a little bit tougher though. Like, the vitamin thing, by the way, apparently they're reworking the concoction inside them, especially with BN and stuff like that. They're called not BN Multi anymore. They're called BN Fit. They're coming out with, because they're rebranding. And they're reworking the tablets, because I said to them when I was talking to them, I said, a lot of people get sick from it. They're like, that's because they had a high level of zinc, I think it was, iron. I think it was iron, and that's what was making people sick, because it was the recommended amount that you require as a bariatric patient, which is a lot higher than normal people. But they're saying they're going to lessen the amount. It's still sufficient amount, just because it was making people very sick. Because it is something you need to. It's almost like
you need to get into that routine early, otherwise you're not going to get into the routine.
Yeah, and it is like, I think the thing that scared me was when my surgeon told me that someone that didn't take multivitamins, they end up with like this bone density issue, and they literally broke their spine. And that for me was like, I'll take my multis. So
there was someone in the community the other day that just fell over and landed the wrong way and broke her wrist or femur or something. I can't remember.
Her arm.
Yeah, her arm.
Yeah. So that, like, and that, again, she had bone density issues, and that I asked in her comments, I was like, have you taken calcium supplements and this thing? Because that was a thing that I got told at my after bariatric appointments and stuff, to make sure you do it for these reasons and so it's one of those things. As much, it's almost like paying for car insurance. You pay for it in the hopes you never need it, but then if you do need it, it's there. It's like multivitamins. Like,
it's the same with the post-op, like the follow-up appointments. I think that would be my biggest advice to anybody like looking into surgery. Try and find somebody that does have a team, because even if you get out of surgery and you think that you're like bulletproof and you're all good and you're sweet, whatever, those follow-up appointments, regardless if you think them or not, they actually in the long run you'll thank them for it, because like you'll look down the track and be like, oh wow, even though at the time I didn't want to do it, it's actually taught me X, Y, Z, or like you can remember back to those conversations, or like I personally think that the aftercare is one of the most vital
I like
things.
If tomorrow I'm going to see my surgeon for like my 4-year, whatever it is, and just having a chat to him. Like, we'll go over my bloods, we'll talk about my the weight stuff. Yeah, probably. Oh no, yeah, probably not. But yeah, I kind of left that to last minute. And we'll just have a chat about where we're at. I'll talk to him a little bit about, like, obviously I talked about today with the alcohol situation, and get his opinion on it. It's good to have that support there, and as he said when we first had surgery, it was like, you're not just buying a surgeon, like you're purchasing, a bariatric mate for life. And he's been that for me. He's always messaging me on things and just won't leave me alone. But I think it is.
See, I wish I had that, because I didn't have that at all. I was told, and I guess it is true, that he is one of the top bariatric surgeons in Melbourne. He has a terrible bedside manner. He has no follow-up consultation whatsoever. And others that I know that I've become friends with through the weight loss community, they have great appointments, follow-up appointments with their surgeons. It was all included in their surgery price. They can call on their surgeons whenever, they text, they email, everything like that. I didn't have anything like that at all, and I wish I did. And I say to everyone who considers it that they make sure that they have great follow-up, because I think that is, a key to success with weight loss.
Like if you decide it isn't for you, you can be like, I'm not going to go. But the option's there, and I think the option is always key.
I was going to ask you what your top tip would be, but would that have been your top tip? Or do you have another top tip?
Well, I think even if you give us a fertility top tip, along with a bariatric one, if you really want, you can give us like 10 if you like.
This woman's only had 3 hours sleep. She wants to go to bed.
Top tips, I guess. Ask the questions. Always ask the questions. Like a lot of people, as I said earlier, it's talked about more now than what it used to be. There's so much help out there for people who are going through fertility. There's Facebook pages, there's Instagram accounts you can follow. Just always ask questions. And, I never felt comfortable asking the questions in the social media outlets, but that's what they're there for. Everyone's been through it before. You're not strange asking these questions. Because everyone has been through it, or if it's not everyone, then an odd one or two have had the same thing. Or, if you don't quite understand and you don't want to ask the questions of your fertility doctor, jump on social media, Google, do all that type of stuff. You will find the answer, and you'll find out that you're not alone. There's so many people who are going through infertility, treatments at the moment, and you're definitely not alone. It's not talked about a lot of the time, and people like to keep it close to their hearts, which, I understand that, but I also understand that you need to be able to be open through your fertility process, and I thank you guys for, opening that up on your Instagram accounts, because more people need to talk about it. Because when I started going through it, like I just felt no one I knew had been through fertility treatments, and I felt so alone, and that didn't help my mental health either. And I just felt like I was just this weirdo, and why am I going through this? Why hasn't anybody else? Everybody else has fallen pregnant so easily. And there's a good 8-year, 10-year gap between my children's ages and the ages of my friends, because they didn't have an issue.
Yeah, no, it is. You're 100% right. And, we're going to do an episode where we talk about our kind of experience. And it sounds similar to yours, to a degree. Like you went through a lot. It seems like yours was a long process. But, it is something that I guess I'll offer off a guy's perspective on it, because, it isn't something, it's a very demasculating thing for a male to go through as well, the whole fertility side of things. And it's definitely not, I haven't seen any male sharing their perspective on it, because it's a very hard thing to talk about. So,
and that's the one thing that I wanted to say as well, when you were saying ask the questions and don't feel like you can't, because if anybody on social media has a fertility account or is talking about fertility openly in their posts or whatever, it's pretty much granted that that's a safe space for you to be able to message them, because they're not going to be posting it all over their socials if they're not wanting to talk about it. You know what I mean? So if you have got questions about fertility or anything like that, and you see people posting about it, there's a pretty safe bet that you can have the conversation with them, because again, they wouldn't be posting it if they were not wanting to talk about it.
Yeah. And worst case scenario, if you want to reach out to Stacey, because she seems like she's very knowledgeable on the whole thing. You said a lot of terms throughout that episode that I was like, I'm just gonna pretend I didn't hear that, because I have no idea what you just said. But if you want to find it, you can get her on Instagram at love.peace.heal.life. Reach out to her. She's got a lot of knowledge and a really kind heart. So Anyway, thanks, Stacey. Thank you for coming on and sharing that with us. I've learned a
Thanks,
lot.
guys. Thanks for having me on.
I feel like with anything fertility, I'm constantly learning because I just thought it was just you fell on her and then that was it. Game over. You're having a baby 9 months later. But turns out it's a little bit more complicated than that.
You were hoping that I'd sit on the
It is,
toilet
yeah.
after you went to the toilet,
Yeah.
and that's just how it happened.
No, yeah,
A
literally.
stalk arrived at the door, and bam.
Oh,
Yeah.
God, that's the dream.
Anyway, that's another episode of
Barry
Barry
Banter.
Banter.
Well, yes, that is another episode of Barry Banter in the books. We hope you got a little something from that one.
Head on over to Facebook or Instagram and check us out, or go to baribanter.com where you can watch past episodes, give us feedback, and let us know who you want to hear from next.
We love you all, and as always, please stay beautiful. didn't want to be in, and led me to like depression and blah 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 because I was like trying to, I was kind of like digging a hole.
I can admit this because I know that your mum doesn't listen to our podcasts, but it got to a point where like your mum was relying on me to run with her, and it started draining my battery because I need to run by myself. Like sometimes I'll run with other people, but like it's my time. I put in my music, I put in a podcast. Sometimes I don't even have music. I don't know how far I want to run. I just leave the house and I go. It's me. Yeah. But then like your mom comes over and she's like, we're going to run slow today. And I'm like, but what if I don't want to run slow today? Or like, oh, we're going to aim for like this pace. Or like she wants to chat with me, or we're going to get a coffee first. It's kind of like it stops being like... It stops being my time.
Work on his boundaries.
Well, I did. I had boundaries today.
You're the kind of person where you just like, no, it's fine, and bam.
Well, I had boundaries today because your mum was like, I'm going to come over and go for a run. And I was like, my knee's sore, I'm not running. Mind you, I ran this afternoon.
Why can't you just communicate?
Because I suck at saying no to people. I know this about me. It's my biggest flaw. I get it. But...
You got pretty good at saying no to me.
Yeah, well, that's a different story. No, but I think it's because I've now actually realized that me running is my me time. It's taken a long time for me to realize that is what I do for myself. I go to the gym to be with people and to work out. I run because I don't know what pace I'm going to take out of. I don't know what pace, I don't know how far I'm going to run, but all I know is that is my time. And that's why I used to love swimming so much. No music, no nothing. I just get in the pool and I swim. It's same thing. Yep.
It is one of those things because like a lot of people in the bariatric world that are anti-exercise, but I feel like they're more what would be the opposite of anti? It's kind of like they're
pro.
Yeah, I knew there was a simple word. They're pro laziness, like because like I know back when I was bigger, I used to be like relaxation is me time and da 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 da, but I didn't understand. Like, I guess for me, having that little bit of like, push to go out and exercise is hard. It is hard, but you got to like almost. I personally, and I know this is probably going to get hate, but like I believe bariatric surgery and exercise go hand in hand. You can't. I personally do not see. You do not see a skinny person as being skinny their whole life who doesn't have some form of exercise ingrained into who they are. And for you to turn around and have bariatric surgery and then be like, oh, but no, that's you. That's old you. That's not who you want to be. Like, that's you justifying not wanting to step outside your comfort zone or like push yourself that little bit, and you're just so like, the phrase that comes to mind is the comfort zone's a beautiful place but nothing grows there. And that's literally what comes to mind, is because I got so comfortable with being comfortable that anything beyond comfortable wasn't necessary.
But also those people who, and I'm probably going to get hate for this as well, those people who say that they've lost all the weight without exercising, that's great. I don't doubt that you have.
And there would be a small majority that can do that.
But how's your mental state?
Yeah.
Because for me personally, I was like, this is great. I have to exercise minimal. But until you start actually doing the exercise and you clear your mind and you start living that lifestyle, that you end up going, oh, wow, like this was holding me back. Like, and I don't believe that exercise is purely to lose weight. It's a mental thing as well. And these people that are saying that they've lost all this weight and they haven't exercised, great. Yeah. But how many times have you seen a psychologist a week?
Yeah, it is. That's the element of weight loss surgery that gives it's the easy way out. Because there's, people like, and we're talking about surgery about it. There are people who are going to have metabolic
you use a big word. Well done.
Metabolic responses to weight loss surgery, that they're going to lose weight and they're going to do really well.
Well, I said that the other day. You get put into a calorie deficit.
Yeah, but there's some people that will respond to it a lot better than others, and there's also on the other end of the scale, and this is what Garth is saying, there's people that are going to have the opposite effect, where weight loss surgery, it isn't going to respond to them as well as it should have, and they're going to be on the other end of the scale. So it's like, for someone to sit there and be like, oh, but I did this without exercise, you got to understand that you may be on the scale of you metabolically are going to respond really well to this, but you saying that is almost going to, someone who's in the middle is going to send them the other way. You need to go, I did this, maybe exercise would have been great, but I got away without it because you don't want to set other people back through giving this. It's easy. Don't even worry about exercising because you need to step outside your comfort zone. You need to incorporate healthy habits, whether it's healthy eating, healthy exercise. You need to ingrain that because if you are
longevity,
if you're the same person, you can't expect to not be the same person after bariatric surgery. You know, doing the same thing and expecting a different result is literally the definition.
And doing this, like the first 12 months, you can't do the same thing. But after that 12 months, it might come back and you'll end up in exactly the same place where you were.
Sorry to... Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Well, I'm glad we're on the same. But you know, it is one of those things. It's going to be one of those things that people are going to be like, "Oh no, but I don't." You know,
I don't run 100 kilometers. And
opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one. And you know, sorry to unload and like, you know, I like, but it is. I'm very opinionated about it because I just feel like we're all vastly different. And by like certain people, like, you know, even me, I could be part of that, like that thing, you know, being deemed successful and what they say is, you know, gospel. It goes both ways. Yes, it could help a lot of people, but it also negatively
it could hinder people as well.
And
yeah,
like I see on social media all the time, and that's why I hardly go on it anymore these days. Is literally, you know, sometimes I'm like, I think you need to maybe, like, I'm not saying that's wrong, but you got to understand there's two sides to that what you're saying.
So if you want to communicate with Shannon, he's on Reddit these days and Discord.
Reddit and Discord. But anyway, Rachel, thank you so much for coming on. If someone wants to reach out to you and, you know, ask you more about your process and more about you, where's the best place to find you? Instagram. Yep. And it's at the next chapter
.vsg.
Very insightful. And you have some good food and stuff on there too. So that's...
We'll pop it into the comments and the links and all those bits and pieces. And make sure to go give Rachel a bit of a shout out and say you loved her episode.
It takes a lot of courage to come on these episodes, guys. So we do recommend, please, if you listen to an episode, you know, go show that person some love because it you know, takes courage to come on, share your story. And she's doing it for the best for everyone. So, yeah, make sure you do that. Anyway, thank you, Rachel. Thank you for coming on. And that is... another episode of
BARI Banter. Oh, you beat me.